Hi, I'm Michael Wan. Thanks for watching us today. The press versus the president. That is the topic of today's op-ed. President Trump has called the press the enemy of the people and fake news. According to Vox, which is a very far-left website, newspapers are fighting back. But why are they attacking Trump altogether all of a sudden? And if you think about it, what's so wrong about Trump attacking the press when they blatantly lie and refuse to report negative issues or corruptions that were happening continuously during the Obama administration? So before I dive into this, I would like to mention that it was the press, the mainstream media, who attacked Trump first, not the other way around. And it goes all the way back to June 16th of 2015. And to be honest, I don't ever remember Trump being covered positively among the mainstream media. Do you? More than 350 newspapers across the United States ran editorials Thursday promoting freedom of the press, part of an effort coordinated by the Boston Globe. Participants include large papers like the New York Times and small local publications with circulations as low as 4,000, and the Globe encouraged editorial boards to participate regardless of their political point of view. The Times has published a list of participating papers, and this is what the Boston Globe's editorial board wrote. The principle of a free press has protected journalists at home and served as a model for free nations abroad. Today, it is under serious threat. In a recent poll, the Globe noted 48% of Republicans and 29% of Americans overall agreed with Trump that the news media is the enemy of the people. 43% of Republicans and 26% of Americans said the president should be able to close news outlets for bad behavior. And the Boston Globe continues, the greatness of America is dependent on the role of a free press to speak the truth to the powerful. To label the press the enemy of the people is as un-American as it is dangerous to the civic compact we have shared for more than 2 centuries. Editorial boards around the country added their own words on Thursday. This is from the Tampa Bay Times. A free press builds a foundation for democracy. Citizens depend on honest, independent media for accurate information they need about their government, their elected leaders, and their institutions. That is just as important in Tampa Bay and in communities across the nation as it is in Washington. And the Tampa Bay Times takes that responsibility seriously. The Chicago Sun-Times piled on. We are, at the Sun-Times, the enemy of unchecked authority and undeserved privilege. We are the enemy of self-entitlement. We are the enemy of the notion that the only way up is to hold somebody else down. And this is probably the most anti-Trump paper out there, from the New York Times. If you haven't already, please subscribe to your local papers. Praise them when you think they've done a good job, and criticize them when you think they could do better. We're all in this together. So I read plenty of articles and editorials regarding this yesterday, today, and the day before. And the Washington Times editorial stood out the most. This is what they printed today, and it is right on. The gathering of the pitchforks on behalf of the ladies and gentlemen of the press is really about sticking it to Donald Trump. Sometimes, often in fact, the press, like the president, deserves a poke with one of those pitchforks. The President of the United States calls us, with his usual excess of noisy exaggeration, the enemy of the people. He calls what he produced fake news, and this hurts the feelings of many folks in the nation's newsrooms. Some of the news is faked, but most of it is not. Many readers and viewers think the reputation of the American press is indeed abysmal. And Donald Trump, smarting from pinpricks inflicted by the press, naturally took up the cudgel conveniently at hand. Now, some newspapers have banded together to assert their collective independence. Today is a day that the Boston Globe has suggested newspapers around the country publish similar editorials to say that we are not the enemy of the people. In an expression of solidarity with our colleagues, here's ours, and here's ours meaning the Washington Times. We expand on the idea of Marjorie Pritchard, the deputy editor of the Globe editorial page, and suggests that the press spend part of the day reflecting on our sins as well as those of the president. Boston Globe says, "We are not the enemy of the people. What we are collectively, here and now, is accurately called the enemy of Donald Trump," which is saying that the press is not the enemy of the people, but Washington Times is pointing out that the press is indeed enemy of President Trump. What set off the latest Trump press tantrum was what the president said in Pennsylvania recently. He pointed to the media and shouted, "Fake, fake," and identified reporters and pundits the enemy of the people. And this so wounded Jim Acosta of CNN that he all but collapsed in tears in an exchange with Sarah Huckabee Sanders in the White House press room. This is what Acosta said. "For the sake of this room, the people who are in this room, this democracy, this country, all the people around the world are watching what you were saying. Sarah and the White House for the United States of America, the President of the United States should not refer to us as the enemy of the people." But the Washington Times responded to Acosta. "Americans are by nature suspicious of conformity of thought. When nearly every flick of the TV remote and click of the computer mouse brings up an avalanche of anti-Trump news, it sure looks like groupthink. Pundits of the small screen cried on camera when Hillary Clinton went down on election night in 2016. Do you remember ABC's Martha Raddatz? The speculation that Trump colluded with Russia travels relentlessly in a closed loop, with press and television heavyweights vying to play, "Can you top this?" with the latest gossip and manufactured rumor. For instance, the Russia scandal. The rallying cry for a united editorial page assault on President Trump is courage in numbers. The press has a responsibility to identify every president's misdeeds and pay no attention to slings, arrows, and insults aimed its way. Setting out to take down a president by any means necessary is not the role of a responsible press. When newspapers return to their fundamental role, the public reputation of the press will recover. The sooner, the better. So the mainstream media or the 350 newspapers that criticize Donald Trump's behavior towards the press, I think that's uncalled for. I have never seen an article from the mainstream media, for instance, New York Times or Washington Post or Boston Globe or even the USA Today. I have never seen a single positive Trump-related article. So doesn't that say something? Of course, not President Trump. He's a smart person, and he notices that. So that's why he deemed them enemy of the American people. Because if you notice it, on November 8th of 2016, he did get more than 62 million votes. And did you know that that is the highest vote in Republican candidate history? Well, the mainstream media has never mentioned that either, so you might not have known. So if you look at this whole thing, this is nothing but propaganda. The editorials that came out yesterday, it was complete nonsense. The NYT, WAPO, it was utter nonsense. They have nothing to complain about. If people start chanting fake news together with President Trump, they should look at themselves and have a soul searching and find out whether they are covering their news fairly or not. Well, that's our show for today. Our show, Op-Ed Live, is not about left or right. It's about what's right or wrong. To stay up to date with our latest videos, make sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel by clicking subscribe. Thanks for tuning in.